When I was a kid, every now and then we'd get to go to a movie as a family. It wasn't something we did a ton. Money was a little bit tight for a lot of childhood for me. But when we went, it was very memorable because it was a special occasion. And I remember every time we go to a movie, we'd get in the car, mom and dad are in the front seat, and they look back at us three kids, and well, not dad, he was driving and not wrecking cars. But mom would look back and be like, all right, what parts did you like? And we would bounce back and forth all the stuff that we liked. And it was inevitably the little kid moments, the sides, the jokes, the jabs, the fart humor, whatever. And the heroic moments where everything works out and you feel all the tension go away and everything's better. And they'd ask us what parts we didn't like. And those were always the darker moments, the moments of confrontation where we'd feel a little bit of trepidation. And it pretty much always broke down along those lines. And I suppose even into adulthood, if you were to ask me, well, what parts did you like about sports and life and relationships and church and work and school and other institutions I'm a part of, I'd be like, the parts that were funny and fun and where awesome things happened and everybody liked each other and it was great. Well, what parts didn't you like? Well, the parts where it was tense and dark and there was interpersonal turmoil. I didn't like things like that very much. It wasn't much fun when there was tension. Well, I think that's just how people are. I mean, maybe some of us thrive on that tension, but for the most part, we're really going to resonate with the things where it feels like it's all clicking and working, and we're going to feel this discomfort and agitation that hangs over us like a cloud over the parts of life, the parts of stories that have this interpersonal ick. Likewise, when we get to Matthew chapter 15, we're getting to one of those places that maybe isn't quite as much fun as other stuff that we've experienced in the book of Matthew. I would think for most of you, if I were in the front seat driving the car coming away from our first 14 and a half chapters of Matthew, and you guys were all in the back seat jumping up and down yelling, "Are we there yet?" And I turned around and was like, "Hey, what parts did you like?" We would probably all agree that it's the parts that are awesome and fun and uplifting, where like dead people stop being dead and where arms grow back out of thin air and where people are amazed and they're like, this is incredible, and where we can picture a reality that is greater and bigger and more redemptive and more beautiful with values that are better than the values of the world kingdom. Like that would be the kind of stuff that I think we would all agree. That was my favorite part. That was the fun stuff. But if I said what stuff wasn't as much fun, I think we would also probably all agree is like, oh, it's the tension. The ratcheting tension is hard. When Jesus speaks sternly to the people who are wrong and it seems like they're enemies and it's all tense, I just feel weird. I like the stuff with dreamy, heroic Jesus healing people, but the stuff where the Pharisees come up and bring up some dumb thing and then Jesus has to reply to it and they bounce back and forth and Jesus is real harsh and his eyebrows go down in the middle. I don't like that stuff nearly as much. And in this hypothetical situation, in our shared podcast family 1979 Datsun 210 hatchback, I got no problem with anybody's answers there. But the reality is that chapters like Matthew 15 do exist. The reality is that the ratcheting tension that we've seen as the Pharisees have flipped from this is interesting to I think we're going to have to kill him, it's there and it's present. And I think from time to time, we got to process that a little bit. So again, we're in Matthew chapter 15. Once again, the elite Pharisees have come all the way up from Jerusalem to have it out with Jesus, and they see that the disciples aren't washing hands the way they think they ought to wash hands. And so the Pharisees are like, let's just start with this. What's with the hand washing? The way your disciples don't do it properly, Jesus. And Jesus is like, and why are you guys complete frauds? Oh boy, this is going to get hot in a hurry. And then Jesus cites some stuff they do that's totally fraudulent and dishonest. And then he invokes a condemnatory prophecy from Isaiah 29 and redirects it at those Pharisees of the modern time. Then he challenges the Pharisees' notions of a key religious idea, that of clean and unclean. And then he doesn't care when the Pharisees get offended. The disciples come to him and they ask, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this? And then he replies, every plant that my heavenly Father's not planted will be pulled up by the roots. Leave them. They're blind guides. If a blind man leads a blind man, both will fall into a pit. Maybe some of us read this and it's cathartic. We look at it and we're like, wow. It is so satisfying when Jesus, as our ambassador, goes out and just burns these people down. But I'm guessing a lot more of us, given the age in which we live and given the Jesus to whom we are accustomed, struggle with this stuff a little bit more. If this were happening on Twitter or Facebook, I could imagine somebody offering a follow-up comment or sliding into the DMs and being like, hey, Jesus, this is off-brand, man. Like your thing is be nice, be cool, look positively to the future. Don't get suckered in by people like this. Is it screwed up that he didn't feel any empathy for the Pharisees' offendedness? Should he? feel empathy for offendedness? Should he be nicer? Should he pull these guys aside and have a private conversation about how to work out their problems and their issues? Should he just do what they're asking and quit teaching and go away out of respect for their authority, because authority is very important? Should he just respect the conventions of the day because the conventions of the day are very important? And after all, who can tell which is the misinformation? Are the Pharisees doing the misinformation campaign, or is it Jesus? Well, if nobody can know, maybe you should just go with what the most people think at any given time. And now I'm doing the thing again where I totally betray what I think with the fact that I couldn't withhold a tiny bit of snark. Bad form, Whitman. Bad form. Look, he has to confront this. The text holds him out as being God in the flesh. The text holds him out as being the Christ, the Messiah. The text holds him out or is setting him up to be this ultimate high priest character who ultimately bridges the divide between God and man. The text is setting him up to be the ultimate sacrifice, who ultimately pays the price for the sins of everyone. The text is setting him up to be a newer and greater Moses who leads his people. And the text is setting him up to be this prophet who speaks absolute truth on behalf of God, and who needs to speak that absolute truth because the people whose job it is to do that have wandered. They've missed the point, maybe with the best of intentions. Maybe they're nice people when they're not plotting to murder people who hold ideas they don't agree with. But the text, and not just Matthew, but all of the Bible, points to Jesus as being the guy whose job it is to address this and to build the kingdom of God. He's not just some guy. And the strategy we see on display here is the Matthew 10:16 strategy for engagement. He's being as shrewd as a serpent and as innocent as doves. He's looking at what these guys are doing. He's accurately reading their motivations, and he's shifting his attention away from trying to please these people who are utterly unpleasable to trying to persuade the crowds and bolster the confidence and strength of his disciples who are definitely in. The humble, quiet, meek Jesus who goes as a lamb to the slaughter, to the cross, that the book of Matthew is setting up, doesn't happen and doesn't make any sense unless we get to know the Jesus who vigorously pushes back against absolutely false things being done in the name of his Father. That disagreement, plus it being part of the cosmic plan for all of redemption, is what ultimately lands him on the cross. Politically speaking, it's the disagreement that gets him there. The Pharisees claim to be the chief representative of God and the guides to the blind, and Jesus looks at it and he's like, I know my Father way better than you do, and what you guys are doing is not reflective of who he is or what he's about or what he told you to do. So I'm going to push back on that stuff because you're wrong and he's right. So big picture, I think most of us are going to most resonate with the healing and the encouragement and the gentleness of Jesus that we see throughout the book of Matthew. And I think we're supposed to, because that is the end game. He's earning that through those actions, but he's also earning it by confronting what is wrong from a position of absolute rightness. And the vicarious discomfort that might cause some of us to feel is an important part of the text and an important part of understanding all of the roles that Matthew is holding Jesus out as performing. Last thought, don't forget that episode 400 is coming up, and if you're not already working on the Easter egg game, you totally should, because the prize is going to be rad. When we get to episode 400, whoever emails me the most comprehensive list of the Easter egg music that Jeff Foote includes in these episodes from time to time, along with why those Easter eggs appear, you are getting a super, super cool prize. Thank you to my friend Jeff for making cool music for the program, and thank you to you for appreciating it and playing along with the Easter egg game, which I think is ridiculously fun. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.